All right. Welcome to another a topic-specific Backcountry BSing.
This is kind of the second topic-specific one that we've done.
Well, we're doing these more now, and I'm going to be quite frank. The whole genesis of this video was I was scouring YouTube for a hot tent tips video, and it didn't exist. So I'm like, well, let's just get some hot tent experts on the podcast and talk to them live. So we'll get there real quick. You wanna remind them?
Yeah, folks, please
go to the iTunes store.
Please rate us on iTunes
and rate Devin's podcast too on the iTunes store. We'll give him a plug too.
Come on. Oh, and by the way, let's pause for 10 seconds. Everybody go over to the Backcountry BSing channel.
There is a link down in the description. There's only going to be a few more podcasts on this channel. We almost have the whole backlog up on the new channel. And then we'll be over there. We'll probably do one or two more on this, and then we will exit the Shill Brothers page, and we'll be on our own.
Yeah.
So we'll leave the nest.
So go over there right now. Pull up a separate window.
Andy's gonna make you.
I'm gonna make you.
Watch you.
Yeah.
All right. We got that out of the way. We've got two repeat offenders here on the podcast.
Two experts.
Subject
matter experts.
Honestly, when it comes to hot tents, there's literally, other than like the Lux channel, which is just Devin doing stuff, there's only really two YouTubers who I go to for hot tent and stuff. So we've got Justin from It's Good in the Woods, and we've got Devin from Backcountry Exposure. Let's bring their pretty faces up on the screen. Welcome, gentlemen. We got the double box going. First off, thank you both for taking the time to do this.
Yes.
And I really do think this standalone podcast will serve as like a good hot tent resource for people. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. So also, we say this every time, we have a bunch of questions. We're going to get into stuff, but if you have questions for either of them or questions specific to hot tents, just drop them in the chat or anything, any question, I guess. It doesn't have to be about hot tents for them.
Yeah. And I think before we kick this off, we should probably describe what is a hot tent.
Who wants to field that one?
Yeah.
Devin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I could take that. So, I mean, a hot tent is kind of like a made-up term.
Yeah.
If you really consider it, all it is, and it's not like this new fancy thing by any means, because people have been using canvas tents with wood stoves as like for outfitters and stuff all the time, like hunting and whatnot. So. Yeah, it's basically a tent, and you've put a wood stove inside of it, and that's it. And it doesn't matter what, like, the fabric is. It doesn't matter what the stove is. It could be cast iron, like a big potbelly stove. It could be titanium stove. Like, you're putting heat into the inside of a tent.
Could it be like a propane Mr. Buddy heater? Would that be considered hot tenting if you had like one of those propane ones?
Probably not, but
okay.
Well, I only ask because I've seen a lot of people do that.
Okay, that's fair.
So a lot of people do it, and I think they would probably consider it hot tenting.
Oh,
I've never actually seen people do that.
I was just before this. I was watching all these ice fishing channels, and they all set up these like cool like ice fishing tents, and they all have those Mr. Buddy propane heaters, and they get those things up to like 60, 70 degrees, and they're just sitting there in chairs ice fishing all day.
Well, is that a hot tent?
I don't know.
I don't know. All right. So I guess before we get into the real questions, I want to ask both of you separately. We'll flip back over to Justin here. So talk to us about how and why you got into hot tenting initially.
Just a different form of comfort. I've been a cold camper most of my life, and it was just another added layer of adventure. Just to do different stuff, push some boundaries. And what really got me interested was I wanted a base camp. I wanted a place where I could go in the White Mountains, I could set up a tent, and I could stay there for a couple of days and go hike some trails and come back to a tent that's nice and warm, cook food. Now, if the tent's not warm, you got to make it warm, obviously. You don't let it run all day long while you're gone. But the idea was to come back and have a shelter that I could heat up and be comfortable in, and get ready for another day of awesome adventure in the mountains. That's what I wanted it for, and that's what got me interested in it.
When did you first get one?
My first hot tent I made out of a tarp.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I wanted to make one and see if it's something that I was actually going to carry through with before I started spending a lot of money on it, because hot tenting is not cheap.
It is not.
No.
Even if you go the cheap route, you're still dropping hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So yeah, I mean, I even made my own stove. Like, that's how I got into hot tenting. I made my own stove, I made my own tent, and
I know,
I started
right?
doing hot tenting stuff.
We look like huge pussies. That's sweet. All right, Devin, why did you and how did you get into hot tenting? And did you make your own hot tent? Because apparently we're doing that now.
Devin, how did you make your stove?
We talked about this earlier. You see my background versus all the tools.
I know, right? I know. That's pretty funny, actually.
I'm the amateur over here. No, it happened by accident, honestly. But I've, for so long, and I think that a lot of people are the same way, that when you go backpacking, it's only summer or like late spring into early fall. And I wanted to expand my options of just spending more time out in the backcountry, and nobody likes to be cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard when you spend those long nights in the cold in your sleeping bag, and you're like, what do I do? It's only 5 o'clock.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So managing a wood stove and cooking on it inside of your tent, it just provided like a new opportunity to spend a different type of experience in the backcountry. So that was like my big motivation behind it.
So I know, Devin, I know you do some hunting. Justin, do you ever do any? Are you a hunter at all?
I am, but only on my own property.
Yeah.
Have either of you used? Because like when I first saw hot tenting was a thing, it was a hunting thing.
Yeah.
It's hardcore in the hunting.
Yeah. Have either of you
sure.
used it for those purposes? Andy and I haven't.
I haven't yet, but I have plans.
Do you plan on it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because that sounds like a very ideal for that sort of stuff, and fishing too. I know we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah. I've done one night in a hot tent.
That's
not,
true.
Not
That's
quite.
True. I've done 2 nights in a hot tent. So I guess I will say, well, we'll get to that. We have like actual questions first, because I'm curious to debrief on like our experience doing it, because it was different than I thought it would be. But when I first heard that, it was like, this is huge in the hunting world, and it almost seems like hot tents are like marketed towards hunting. Like they're kind of marketed towards backpacking, but I think like, especially, I don't know, Lux and Seek Outside, which are definitely seem to be the biggest ones. They seem to market their products like almost specifically for hunting. And I was like, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea.
Well, you have to consider like what the season is. When you're out hunting, it's cold. It's usually like pretty wet. And if you're really going to go try to find an animal, you're not just like, I'm going to park my truck on the side of the road and hope something shows up.
Right.
Like you're hiking in, and you're spending several days out there. So the reason that the hot tent is so valuable for a hunter is you have the extra space for all of that gear. Because like you might be on an archery hunt and you've got to find a place to put your bow and like all those necessary things that you carry with you, plus like a kill kit and a large pack. And so you're not always going to have beautiful weather too. So the wood stove just is prime for keeping your clothing dry, staying warm, and just having a more comfortable experience when you're out there for such a long period of time.
Absolutely. And I mean, most people that are hunting like that too, I mean, they're, like you said, you don't just get out of your truck and walk 100 yards into the woods and sit. I mean, these guys are packing for days sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Walking into mountains, not on trails, bushwhacking, like for days. I mean, these guys are hardcore.
That sounds like something I'd want to do.
So we need to draw some elk tags in Utah.
I was like, that sounds like it. And fishing too.
That's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Devin, you've done that, haven't you?
That I've gone out and hunted like that?
Yeah. Haven't you done elk stuff? I thought you had.
Not out of a hot tent, just like
right. But just in general,
day hunt kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was so we went out like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago for his first time. And we were kind of talking about
myths.
It was different. It was obviously, it was a lot of work, but it wasn't, I mean, with two people. So the other thing is you guys, I mean, Devin, you go with, I mean, you guys both go with people, and I guess both of you do share hot tents with people. But the first thing is having two people makes it so much easier.
Yeah. I mean, so this is on my questions list.
Okay. All right. Ask the fine men.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, you packed your backpacking, you got everything packed up. How much time are you giving yourself, like, to set this thing up? Like, ideally, how early are you getting to camp to get all set up with your hot tent solo?
Who do you want to ask first?
Oh, we'll
go to just pick.
Go for it.
That way they both aren't talking about it at the same time.
Got it.
For me, I don't necessarily think about time so much as location, because your location can save you a lot of time. You know, if you're hiking along and you're backpacking and you've got your hot tent and all your gear, and then all of a sudden you pop out in this spot and there's a whole bunch of available standing deadwood, a nice little spot to put your tent, you know, maybe it's a good idea to not keep pressing on and take that spot and utilize all that available resource, which is going to save you a bunch of time, which is going to make your trip quite a bit more relaxing. That's one of the things I look for is available resources. You know, I don't want to pitch a tent and then start walking around for a mile looking for wood.
I didn't think about it like that.
That's not necessarily an issue when you're really in the woods, because standing dead wood is readily available.
Yeah.
It's not like a campground or anything of the sort, you know, where some people carry their wood in.
Totally.
That to me is odd, but I get it in the situation of the campground, you know, everything's scoured.
Yeah.
But ideally, I mean, I'd like at least an hour and a half to collect wood.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It really does take a lot of time. But that's one of the beautiful things about it, because backpacking, like Devin mentioned earlier, you know, if you're just backpacking and cold camping, usually I'm going until almost dark, because I don't want to be sitting there for a couple hours with nothing to do, freezing my ass off.
Yeah.
Just thinking about how awesome the view was, you know, that I saw for the day. So having the option to collect wood and have a hot tent and set up a stove and all that stuff is really a benefit in that situation, for sure.
It's
you don't want to be caught in the dark hot tenting.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I can definitely say that.
That would suck.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to either of you?
No, not yet.
That would suck. All right, Devin, how much time are you allotting yourself to get everything ready?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to Justin in that sense. I don't spend time like, oh, I need to be in camp by this certain period of time. Like I've taken off on one of my trips that I did early on. I think it was actually the second or third time that I had been out with the tent. I didn't leave my house till almost 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. Then I drove up and I set up the stove and everything. And fortunately, it was a place that I had been to previously, so I knew that there was wood that we had already processed, so it was ready to go. So that was super helpful. But yeah, I don't think it's as much work as it maybe gets played out to be. Honestly,
I would agree.
I got one night. I don't know, guys.
But I use it as it's the mindset of that. It's just a different purpose of being out there.
Yeah.
So I always think of it as it's part of the project. It's part of what you're doing. And I never hike more than 2 or 3 miles in to wherever I'm going.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff that I've done has been solo. I carry the stove, the tent, everything.
Yeah.
It first off, obviously makes a huge difference if you can split it between two people. But I didn't think about some things that were when we got into when we went hot tenting a few times. Some things that stood out as I was wow, I didn't think about that. One thing you guys hit on is wood availability can make a huge difference.
And also these stoves, they're not the biggest stoves in the world. So you have to spend a decent amount of time processing wood down to the perfect size to utilize.
That is true.
Yeah. And
however, those stoves, even, I mean, I think there's such a horrible, people often talk about the burn times of these stoves really sucking, especially the titanium ones, the smaller titanium ones, how inefficient they are. You hear that a lot. I mean, they're definitely pretty inefficient in comparison to other stoves, but they're super efficient compared to a campfire.
Yeah.
Like you're burning so much less wood.
Yes,
so there's
definitely
a lot of time saved right there. A lot.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah,
because like when we laid out all the wood, and we ended up actually having a little bit too much wood, and like we basically had wood for like 3 p.m. until 10 a.m. the next day. And if you look at all that wood, it's far less than you would use having like a big campfire
Substantial
at night. But it's just like, you just got to get it down to size, which can be annoying. I don't know. There's just, but yeah, I don't know. I
break that into sections. If you get enough to start getting going, instead of doing it all at once, if you break it into like thirds, it's not quite so bad. And you get your stuff going, split it all up, get it processed to the size you need it, and start doing other stuff. And then an hour or so later, start processing a little bit more. That's one of the reasons why I like to run floorless, because I don't want to collect all that junk inside my tent. That's usually where I'm processing. So that's kind of the way I break up the monotony of processing all that wood. I split it up into thirds or quarters, or separate it out into different chores. That helps a lot.
So you get the stove going and just get the burning going, and then you just start processing the wood. Like you'll process some wood, then process some more, and like kind of break it up like that way. Is that how you do it?
Yep. Like I'll have all the wood collected that I need, and then I'll process some. I'll get the stove going, and then I'll start laying out my sleep system. And then I'll have a beer. I'll process some more wood, and start working on my food. Then start processing some more wood, instead of doing it all at once.
Yeah. We definitely did it all at once.
Yes.
That your way sounds better. Devin, what's your wood processing protocol?
Well, I put out a video, like, I don't know, it's been a few months now since I have been out for different reasons, but having the right tools for
you do not want to know how many times
important.
You don't want to know how many times I watched that video. Sorry to stop you, Devin, because that's when you're going through your hot tent setup with the Octopeak. I've watched the video probably like 15 times. All right, sorry, continue.
Yeah, like you would think, all I need is an axe, or only a saw, or like a little tiny like silky saw, and that's gonna be enough. Like when you're processing wood for a full night or just a weekend of timeout with the wood stove, you need a lot of wood. And so breaking it up into like different sections is important, because that's going to help you stay warm. Every time you get out of the tent, you're doing then manual labor that's just going to help you stay warm that way. But yeah, those tools, they make a big difference in being able to process enough wood at a time, because I imagine we'll talk about this later, but I don't run the stove all night unless I happen to wake up and I want the fire going. But I always process way, way, way more wood than I think I would ever need.
Same.
And that was one of our scripted questions. But I am curious on like, I didn't know what to expect when we went. Like we ran the stove for the most part all night, but it's a pain.
It's impossible for it to not die out, assuming you go to sleep for at least a few hours.
Yeah.
I thought
that's stove dependent. But for the stoves that we have, all of us, absolutely.
That's right. We all have the same stove.
No, we don't. But we have titanium stoves.
That's true. Right? I thought if you got like a good, and I don't think we had a good enough bed of coals, to be honest, but I thought if you got a really, really good bed of coals and you put a big, thick one in there, it would go for like 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah, no chance.
Have you guys found that to be ever true? We did not. Mm-hmm. So if you get the right one?
Well, I mean, if you get like a Winterwell stainless steel stove, your chances of going all night are much better. And our stoves, they're not efficient. They're sucking air. They're not airtight. They're just going to burn everything up. That being said, this winter, for the first time ever, I did wake up to some coals in my stove.
Oh,
No.
But I was up very late carving wood for one of my projects,
yeah.
and drinking and having a great time. Ended up going to sleep, and the next morning when I dumped out the coals, there was still some coals, just like a little flicker of light, not like a bed of coals,
Yeah.
you know, but there was still signs of life, and I've never seen that before, not out of my stove. So I was pretty impressed about that. But that's the day that I was testing out my glass door.
Oh,
I wanted to get the stove ripping to test that glass door, so I stayed up and just fed it, and fed it, and fed it, and fed it. Yeah, but that's the only time it's ever happened. I'm with Devin. I let it go out. I'm fully prepared with the right gear for the conditions, and my stove goes out at night.
Yeah.
So, Devin, I do want you to answer. Like, are you routinely having a good bed of coals in the morning?
It just depends what I have access to.
He's cold at night.
Yeah, he's cold at night. That's the dirty hot tent secret.
Yeah. No, it just depends what wood you have access to, because I've done trips in the desert where like juniper trees are the only thing available, and juniper is like very similar to cedar, so it just burns really quick and super hot. But there's no way you're gonna, like, it's not a hardwood, so you're not gonna have the option for coals. But when I'm up in the mountains and I've got pine or aspen or other trees available that are a little bit harder, and pine's not a hardwood either, but I'm in Utah, there's not hardwood trees like you have out.
Yeah.
I don't have oak trees and stuff readily available or anything. But what I was going to say is that a big trick that I learned from the owner of Lux in spending some time with him out in Washington is cutting your logs to length, but not splitting them, and finding wet pieces. Anything that like has been sitting in the ground for a long time, might be a little dirty, that has like some kind of moisture content, and then really sliding that damper all the way shut, so that it can just sit there and like really take and it's not feeding a lot of oxygen. That helps
like smolder.
It create like a way longer burn.
Yeah.
Oh.
We didn't do that.
No, not at all.
No, we split stuff, but that makes total sense.
Yeah.
But both of you, it sounds like both of you have every intention of the stove dying overnight. So like,
I do.
That was something that was new. I mean, I figured, so the first night not with him, basically I was with my dad, and we just were both awake, offset, and took turns feeding it. But even then, it's still like, it's not like we weren't just able to just wake up, throw some wood in there, and go back to sleep. It didn't work like that. And then with you, it died at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And we just were awake. We got up and we crushed a bag of Doritos and got that thing rip roaring. But I will say it was nice. One thing about hot tanning that I really liked, and I don't know if you guys do this, is we built it back up in the morning, and it was so nice having a warm area to make coffee and like just hang out. Because normally in the winter backpacking in the mornings sucks because you're freezing cold, crawling out of a tent, making coffee or whatever, and huddled. And it was so nice, and it was super easy to build it back up, right? I mean, I don't like it went right back up. Yeah.
You can do it from your sleeping bag.
I know, like literally we did. We just laid there and just like threw stuff in there.
Yeah.
And the morning experience was very nice. I thought
that's my favorite part about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's my greatest convenience for me personally.
Is the mornings.
Waking up in the morning, getting that stove going, not freezing your ass off, doing everything else that you need to do in the morning.
Yeah.
It's really nice to have a nice warm area and a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and laying there on your side, like with your head poking out of your little like air hole of your sleeping bag, watching the fire through the glass.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
And that
so awesome.
that is
So
something
relaxing.
both of you guys talked about before we got the Lux, the 3W stove. Both of you guys talked about it in videos about how much you guys liked having the glass window there. That is huge.
Yeah, it's
like
cool.
So awesome.
not only is it actually a really nice light source to fall asleep to, like it's cozy, but you can have a pretty good idea of the status of the fire by like I couldn't imagine not having that glass window there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it'd be difficult to just constantly monitor it.
I don't know, I really like it. It was really cozy. I don't know. You guys were talking about it like in your videos, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then when I was out there, I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's like having a fireplace.
The visual stimulation is high.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Let's we were talking about this before we kicked off, and I think it's an interesting topic. So, we're still obviously very new to hot tenting, and we carried a carbon monoxide detector.
Yeah, we want to talk about this.
I see like everybody in their videos have them going.
First off, do either of you carry a carbon monoxide detector?
I used to, but I don't anymore.
Okay. Devin?
Same.
Okay. All right. So we're ditching ours. There's nothing more terrifying than the concept of dying in your sleep.
Yes.
The idea of it is very nerve-wracking.
It's very nerve-wracking.
Is it one of these? I got to be careful here because I mean everybody everybody has their own level of comfort and safety that they want to achieve, and that's totally cool. And carbon monoxide detectors don't weigh much and super easy to carry around, whatever. But is it kind of a little overhyped, the dangers, or are they, real?
I mean, there's people dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. Yeah, it happens. There's a lot of documented cases of it, so it's definitely real.
Yeah.
The parameters of what make that happen, I think, are pretty skewed, maybe not quite really wholly understood inside the community. That being said, I'm not a professional. This is why I don't really do how-to videos and all that stuff, because I'm not a qualified professional, and I don't feel like my opinion matters so much.
Oh, it matters.
Yeah.
It matters.
But yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. That being said, I personally have never come across a situation where it has been caused from a wood stove. Wood stove being the key term.
Yeah.
Like, very important to understand. That's a big point of it. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened. I'm just saying that I haven't found a case of it. It's always some sort of gas or charcoal that's usually the culprit inside a tight area. Snow caves, tents, people cooking in tents with canistered gas, that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of documented cases of it. But it's a touchy subject, and certainly each to their own, because it's a small device. It doesn't weigh much, and it's certainly worth a peace of mind.
Yeah, and like
absolutely.
The $10 or whatever that you spend on Amazon to get a little battery powered one, if it makes you feel better,
absolutely,
by all means, like, go for
it. So I'll ask each one of you this separately. Like, how long or how many times did you? So Justin, like, how many times did you hot tent with a carbon monoxide detector before you ditched it?
I don't have a number, but my first year, my first season of hot tenting, I carried a carbon monoxide detector religiously, and I'd set it in different locations and experimented with it, and not once ever did it say that I was in a dangerous situation. That being said, it's something that we're probably going to talk about later, but I always have a sleep system that's rated for the conditions outside. I do not use a hot tent as my safety net.
Survival mode.
I sleep with a lot of ventilation. My tents are always open. I know we each have our own way. Everybody does it different, but I don't seal the base of my tent, and I always leave the vents on the tops open, and I'm sleeping with a lot of ventilation going, and that helps combat anything that would potentially happen.
For sure.
And I do that all for peace of mind. I've said plenty of times I've never seen a wood stove case, but I don't want to be the first.
Right.
I'm certainly not going to button my tent up and test that theory out by any means.
Devin,
how about you?
Yeah, how long did you go with a detector?
It wasn't as long, just because I don't get out in the winter as much as Justin does. I know that, like,
don't sell yourself short, Devin. You're still going out there.
But it was probably like 7 or 8 times that I went, and then honestly, I think the batteries just died, or it kept going off in the garage
Oh,
from the
from your
cars.
That's
So
funny.
my wife like opened it up and pulled the batteries out, and I just got lazy and stopped taking it with me. But I'm honestly the same way. I even if I have one of the tents, because I have several different tents that all have the snow skirts and whatnot.
Yeah.
So if it has the snow skirts, then that helps trap a lot of the heat. But I always make sure that there's airflow from the ground that can move through the tent out the vent through the door at the top of the door.
Do you this is a good question for you, Devin. What do the manufacturers say to do? Like, do they say carry one 100%?
Well, if you look like specifically on the Lux tents, I don't own any other brand, but like on the stove jack cover of the Lux tents, there is like a printed label that's like skull and crossbones, like
Okay.
about carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
They actually recommend that you don't use anything that burns pretty much anything inside of the tent.
Oh, really?
Right.
They're fairly they're covering their bases.
Okay,
Like, don't do this,
okay, okay.
CYA kind of.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
That's
Absolutely.
interesting.
It is interesting. It's do you guys know why carbon monoxide kills you? It's kind of an interesting little physiological tidbit. If either you guys probably know. Do you know?
Does it prevent your blood from absorbing oxygen?
Yeah. So the reason carbon monoxide is so dangerous is it has a very, very high affinity for hemoglobin, like 1,000 times higher than oxygen. And the problem is like carbon dioxide, for example, if you're in a situation where you're being poisoned from carbon dioxide, you're going to know. But what happens when carbon monoxide binds in your blood, none of your physiological systems detect that, and so that's why you just die in your sleep.
Oh,
yeah, that's why it's scary.
yeah.
So it just outcompetes the oxygen, and your body doesn't really know it. Yeah, and it's not like any other gas being poisoned from.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so like I don't know the right word. It's so like nefarious. I don't know. It's kind of scary, but talking to you guys makes me feel better about it. Although I feel like now I'm just not going to take my carbon monoxide detector after this conversation.
No.
Well, I talked to Justin about this on Facebook a while ago, and I remember you sent me. There were some statistics from I think it was Georgia. You know,
it was from the CDC.
It was from the CDC, yeah. And it was I mean, it was scary. It was like these people were out car camping and a whole entire family died in a tent.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, none of it was all propane. None of it was wood stoves. But then I remember I was telling you, I was like, yeah, my dad thought throwing some charcoal briquettes in there was a good idea. And you're like, no, that's not a good idea.
Don't do that.
No. So I didn't think about how like the different substrates will give off carbon monoxide differently. And like, yeah, we've brought it twice and the detector never. The other scary thing about carbon monoxide, and this is the same like in your homes and stuff, is it's heavy, right? It's dense, so it settles on the floor, like right where your head is while you're sleeping. That's why they tell you to put the carbon monoxide detector on like the lowest point. So I don't know, but I feel like we were super anal about maintaining ventilation. I mean, the Lux tents are nice because they have those pop out vents at the top, and we don't have snow skirts. I mean, granted, we did kind of seal it in.
No, we made our own.
But I don't know. It's something that like the second you start researching this stuff, it's like, oh, red flag. I got to worry about this now.
Yeah.
But I was just curious if people who do this a lot, I mean, it sounds like you guys take it seriously, like you should, but
We have to,
yeah,
especially when you're talking to people about it.
yeah.
Like on the other end of a camera, like that I have no idea who you are.
Well, I also think you brought up really you know, through this conversation so far, you've brought up the point that like I'm really not staying up and keeping this thing going all
Well,
night.
that was Justin's point, is like at the end of the day, I'm going to let this thing burn out anyway at night. I mean, mostly burn out. So like, is it really that big of a deal?
Yeah. And then that kind of segued into a question, which this was a learning experience to me. So when I went for the one night that I've done, I was talking to Kevin and I was like, and it was, what did it get down? Like 15 degrees?
No, it was colder, single digits.
Okay.
It was cold.
Yeah.
For
Before,
us.
when we were planning on going down, I was like, yeah, I'll just take my 20 degrees because it's basically going to be like,
this is a good point.
I was going to take my 20-degree bag because it's basically going to be like Florida in this thing. And Kevin's like, yeah, just take the 0.
No, I'm like, you want to be equipped for the conditions.
So I took the 0, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm glad I took the 0, because even with that thing ripped.
Well, that is a miss, and I want to talk to both of you guys about this.
Yeah.
That's a misnomer with these hot tents. Like people, I mean, when you watch people using, you're like, oh, it's going to be 60 degrees all night. And that's just not, I mean, I guess if you stayed up and fed the thing super hard all night, maybe it would be, but we were just, hey, let's just pack as if it's not going to be hot in there, and then you'll just be cozy. Yeah. I'm assuming that's what you guys both do. I don't know.
I don't think I quite understand what you
like. We're not like, if we're going out and it's 10 degrees, we're bringing 10-degree setups, even though we have a hot tent.
For sure, absolutely,
you know,
100%.
Yeah, you're still going to bring the same setup that you would do if you were not using a wood stove. But I think it's important as well to remember that, like, the wood stove is a tool, and like, you're going to use it to cook with. You're using it in a hunting scenario to like keep your clothes dry and like dry things out. And obviously the added heat makes it more comfortable, but unless you are carrying some kind of fan as an additional device in your pack that you attach to your center pole somehow, or is able to push the hot air down, it's not that much warmer on ground level on top of your sleeping pad.
Yeah.
But obviously when you're like sitting up in the tent, you're cooking and everything, you're like at that level above the stove where the heat from the stove and the stovepipe are pushing a lot of that. So you feel that and you're comfortable and taking your down layers off and everything. But dude, once you lay down, you're so low, like at the level of the stove where the heat, that you've got to have something to push that air down for it to be effective enough for you to really take advantage of how like warm you could sleep with a lighter and warmer system for sleeping.
I think it's also really important right now to point out to the viewers that we are, the 4 of us, very specifically talking about like lightweight backpack systems.
Yes.
Because there's people that have heavy duty canvas tents and badass steel stoves, and they get those things cranking for days on end, and it's just a completely different scenario. Honestly, 100%. So
like
I just want to let the viewers know that
a popular stainless steel stove that gets used in a lot of canvas tents and just like bigger outfitter type of things is called the G stove.
Yeah, those things are sick.
Yeah, they're super cool, but you would never carry that.
Are they that much warmer?
Oh, that looks awesome.
Yeah, so like everybody that's watching, it's the stove that's over Justin's right shoulder. That's not the G stove, but like the lightweight.
That's the Seek Outside.
Yeah, super like compact, tiny little things that break down.
Yeah, as to where the G stove is like what, 20 pounds.
Is the fact that it's stainless steel, like, so I'm assuming it stainless steel retains heat more. I mean, was that why? I mean, titanium cools down like instantly.
Yeah, it doesn't retain heat.
Like, it's no different than your cook pot, like a titanium Tokes cook pot versus.
They're also like tighter. You know, these titanium stoves are folding breakdown stoves. The seams aren't sealed. There's all kinds of air getting sucked in.
That's true.
So they're not very efficient. So the G stoves and like the Winter Wells and all these stoves that are awesome in stainless steel, they're way more efficient, but they're heavy.
I didn't think about how much better they'd be from a heat retention perspective.
So much. It's totally different than what you would be used to with your little Lux stove. You know, it's a different game completely.
So Devin brought up 2 questions I want to talk about. So first, because both of you guys, I think at least, routinely camp and hot tent camp in bear country. Is that a fair statement? Okay.
For me, not black bears.
Yeah. Correct.
So, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So one thing that was really surprising to me about hot tents, I was very happy and very impressed with using the stove as a cooking surface. Like, it worked really well. But like, we were crushing pulled pork in our tent, like spilling it on our sleeping bags. And like, we were not in bear country. And I mean, Andy and I were talking about this. Like, what do you guys do? Do you guys just roll the dice? Do you just boil water in there, or like, do you even care?
I
or
mean,
are we making
during
too much of it?
deep winter when bears are hibernating,
They're not necessarily hibernating, but I mean, correct. In the winter, it's a little bit safer. But like, do you guys factor that in? Do you consider it? Like, what's the deal? All right, Devin, you go first.
So, at least in my location, bears are very scarce.
Okay.
And I have personally never seen a bear in any of my trips ever. So, I mean, they exist, like they're in the areas that I go, but I've never come across bear scat on the trail.
Oh, wow.
I've never, like, in fact, this probably isn't the best practice, but I've stopped hanging my food.
Nice, dirty secret. First off, I want to mention people in the comments.
Yeah.
Not all bears hibernate in the winter. That is actually a misnomer. A lot do, but especially in warmer climates like Tennessee in the winter, like they don't necessarily hibernate. So
even
Google
out
it.
Here,
Yeah,
they're known to wake up.
Yeah, Google
and
it.
Go out if it gets unseasonably warm or anything of the sort. They will snap out of it and come around.
I was just like, I mean, we don't. I mean, I guess we were. I mean, we're probably gonna take the hot tent to a brown bear area.
Yeah.
You know, and like it wasn't just like
that's a different game.
Yeah, it wasn't like we were just boiling water. Like, no, we were barbecuing.
Yeah, I think I had probably had like pieces of Doritos all over my sleeping bag.
I was like, there's gonna be mice in here all night. So I was just curious, like, if I guess what you do in a serious bear. So, I mean, you would just boil water in there and then take it out and eat it. I guess I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, Justin, are you doing anything?
No. I'm cooking steaks.
Yeah,
I know. I've watched your videos. Yeah, you're inspiring us. Yeah,
but it's real. I mean, I'm with Devin. I've never ever encountered any sort of negative bear activity on any of my trips, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, like he said, because it does happen. But typically, when I go camping, I'm not hanging out at campgrounds. That's
true
thing. Like, I'm way out in the woods, and bears are hip to the trick. They know where the high flow activity is going on and where the easiest food sources are. And that's where everything gets plagued, all the campgrounds and the high density areas. I've never even had a problem in the summertime. I have done the practice of hanging my food for years, and I'll also admit, and I probably shouldn't, that I'm slacking on that these last couple of years. Just like Devin said, and I've not hung my food quite a few times. I've never had an issue with it. Not the best practice, but
like the dirty secrets that are coming out here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys carry axes. You could,
Yeah, well, that's what I told Andy. Yeah. I go, at least I've got an axe with the hot tent, and I feel like I've got some sort of defense mechanism. But I wouldn't actually be worried about it. It's just like, dude, I mean, we had pulled pork. It's
winter time.
Yeah, I know.
You're good.
So
you're not.
Yeah, I know. Right? And all it takes is one, like a black bear to stick its head in the tent. And you're like, So, okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about, and Devin, you kind of brought this up, is so when I was in the hot tent, first off, you guys, something I never realized was like on the ground floor, like we talked about, it's not that much warmer, like when you're on the floor. So when I was at the first time, I was like, man, like, does anyone make some sort of small fan or convection current? Like, if you could circulate the air in that hot tent, it would, you'd get better airflow in general to deal with the carbon monoxide issue. But it'd be warmer throughout. Cause like you guys know, like it's ridiculous at the top of the tent. I mean, it's absurd. It's like 70 degrees, like way up at the top. Yeah, like super hot. And like, have you guys ever thought about, or is there some sort of product that exists? And do you think it's worthwhile for like some sort of circulating setup? I don't know who wants to answer that first.
The product exists.
It does?
A lot more, it's more weight. Yeah, they have little convection fans. You put them on top of your stove.
Like on. Oh, okay. I didn't know
that.
The
fan going, but it's another thing to carry. They're not exactly light. They probably make lightweight, whatever that would be. But it's just another thing.
Hot tents are heavy enough.
if I was going to let my stove run all night, then maybe I would consider it. But again, like it all comes down to the sleep system.
Yeah.
Hot tenting is one of those situations where I actually am probable to carry a chair, so that I'm not just sitting on the ground. I'm kind of by the stove up a little bit, hanging out. But by the time it's time to go to bed and everything's settled in, like I don't even care. I'm just flopping in the system and passing out.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter so much to me, I guess.
Devin, what do you think about a possible fan convection system?
I think if you're in a large enough tent that you would need to move the air, then it would make sense. Or if it is crazy cold out, like negative degree temperatures, then being able to move that air and push it down so that you are keeping the temperature higher, then I think that carrying it totally makes sense. But for the little like 3-person, even the Octopeak that you guys are using, or the Megahorn, which I know that Justin has that, which is a 4-person, like all of that, just
super jets.
They're not like quite big enough for you to really need to move the air. That's my opinion. I know there's somebody in the chat, Poucher, is talking about he's got a fan, but
yeah, I would say like if you're a car camper or something, and I'm not saying Jacob's a car camper by any means. If you're a car camper, a lot of people that hot tent are car campers. They're real close to their vehicles and safety. Yeah. Like take it. It totally makes sense. It absolutely does in that situation.
Okay, so it's just it's a weight. Okay, but it does from a conceptual standpoint. I'm not crazy to think it does make sense.
Yeah, no, I've seen other people do it.
Also, we got to shout out. We for the first time ever enabled super chats for this.
So walk
tall. Shout out.
Thank you.
I didn't know what super chats were. Kyle Hates Hiking, our resident millennial YouTuber, told me about it.
Dude, did you see his newest video?
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, it's gold. It's
I haven't watched it yet.
That guy's so funny. He's so funny.
I just saw he invited us on his podcast and we did it yesterday, and he was telling me about super chat and all his millennial things. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. So shall we turn him on? Shout out.
Hold on. There's actually All Things Outdoors. Todd asked a pretty good question. Yeah. He asked a good question that I didn't expect this either, but from the heating and cooling, is there ever condensation issues inside the tent?
The answer is
yes.
So,
definitely.
Yeah. Would you like to answer this, Devin?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, I mean, every time that I've gone out, it's a single wall tent.
Yeah,
exactly. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen. And especially with the change in temperature between inside and out, as the stove burns out and that cold air moves in, like there's so much change that happens so quickly, and I've never not had condensation.
Now, as long as your stove is running, you're not going to have it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you will on the lower parts. Like you can actually see where that fluctuation in temperature is taking place, because on the lower portion of the tent, you'll have condensation. And once the heat starts working, it's not there. But as soon as that stove goes out, it all moves in fast. You're going to wake up to the frosty for sure. It happens.
Yeah.
Like Devin said, it's a single wall tent. It's nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I that kind of blew my mind too, and it was exactly what you said. Like the
bottom like 2 feet of the tent
Yeah.
wall just like covered in frost.
Yeah.
Last time we went out.
Roughly about the height of the top of your
Yeah,
stove.
that's a good point, actually. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I didn't think about that. But at least, like, first off, the Octopeak. Justin,
It's
you just,
awesome.
I know you just got one.
Yeah.
I think
Huge.
for 2 people, I think it's perfect.
With
I
a
think
stove.
with the stove and 2 people, I think it's good. I think it's probably the perfect size.
You could do 3 people, but it's gonna get cramped.
It's gonna be tight.
Yeah.
Super tight.
It's gonna be tight.
Yeah, and you guys went with a good option of not having the snow skirts, especially in
Oh, I'm so
Ohio.
because you get the
where-
2 doors.
Yeah, you get the
I'm
2
so
doors.
jealous.
You have
Oh.
4.
Yeah, Justin's got the snow skirts because it was the only
Yeah.
option.
And mine has the snow skirts as well, but like with the 2 doors, you get the 2 vents. So you're creating
I
that
didn't.
much more
I didn't think
airflow
about
within
that.
And opportunity for.
So there's only one vent on the snow skirt version. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was so jealous. I was in such a yank because they've been such high demand, and I saw that I just like 5-6 times a day I'd go check and see if it was back in stock. As soon as it was, I went and bought one, and it's the only option they had. So I was like, I don't even care. I'm buying it.
That's awesome.
So now I have buyer's remorse. You want to trade?
No. I bought the Devin. I bought the 1-person bathtub floor, and it's still not like it's on back order. I bought it like 2 months ago because I've been using the Tyvek.
So
I know it looks really good.
Tent.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Justin, there's
cool.
there's some comments building up about your lean-to in here. Bryce asks, how many YouTubers does Justin's lean-to fit?
That was pretty cool.
Let's get it going.
Yeah.
I actually had my first YouTuber hangout there on Wednesday. My buddy Craig Dwella, I go on canoe trip.
Oh, I've seen that canoe video.
Yeah. He came up on Wednesday. We hung out at the lean-to. Did a overnight.
Nice.
Cool. First one. So
that's very cool. That's very cool.
YouTube meetup in New Hampshire.
I know, right? I know. New Hampshire's the hottest place to winter backpack now, at least.
Yeah.
I kind of have another random question. Well, I guess you probably have real questions.
No, I actually we've been able to incorporate like a lot of these questions into it, so I appreciate you guys hitting on a lot of this stuff. We just released a video on like we called it hacks, but then everybody in the chat's like, those aren't hacks, those are just tips. So like yeah, we got some interesting comments on that video.
Isn't that kind of the same thing?
Right, yeah. But I mean, are there any types of like people crave this stuff, by the way? Like, are there any type of like tips or hacks that you guys can think of that maybe a little hot tent specific?
Like, what are your good hot tent tips?
Yeah.
We'll go. All right. We'll go. Who looks like they don't want to answer right now?
I don't really think I have any hacks.
Yeah.
There's no great history to it. You know, it's
your hack is how to make your own.
Well, also your protocol for processing wood and running the stove in between tent setup, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a good tip. You know, like that's something you said that. And I was like, oh, that does make sense. Like, let's go, let's get there, let's get the tent, let's get the stove going, and then do the sleep system. You know, like that. We didn't do that the last time, and like that makes sense. You know,
I would say invest in it's not really a hack, but as a tip, but invest in a good saw.
Yeah,
something that's gonna work, because you don't want to be cutting seasoned standing oak with a bad saw.
Yeah,
that's a good tip.
No fun.
And dare I say, and I'm gonna piss everybody off, but I think a saw might be a saw might be a little bit better than an axe if I had to choose. I know.
I actually don't. I've only taken the axe twice, and you know an axe we have, and I would both times have been very impressed with with what an axe can do.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
I've never used one before, and he found the saw to be more useful.
Sure.
I found the axe to be more useful. It just depends on what wood you're dealing with. I mean, honestly, right? I mean that's what. And
it depends on the size of the wood too.
Yeah. That's a big.
Yeah. I like to use the axe to really quickly break up the little tiny
that's what I was doing.
Wrist size pieces that it doesn't like just whacking that against a larger log is a lot easier, but. In the sense of the saw, that has probably been the biggest learning curve of what makes the most sense. Like the saw that I've been using primarily because it's so light is Alex's saw.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Makes me giggle.
Nothing against that saw, but in needing to process a lot of wood, that saw is terrible.
Yeah, it's a Sawzall blade, dude, on a light handle.
So I mean I guess that's my tip is the Sven saws or like the buck saws that like what Justin has hanging on his wall, or the saw that I just picked up is the Agua Canyon out of Canada. Like dude, those are badass.
I built that on a quest to make a lightweight buck saw. I actually used it this week for the first time in field testing it. And that's a 21-inch buck saw with a dry wood blade. And it weighs 13.3 ounces.
Wow.
Jeez.
That's rad.
Yep. And it rips. It works.
Yeah.
I've been pushing the weight. I just made it out of pine. And a bunch of people told me it couldn't be done. And it works.
That's pretty sweet.
So
That's pretty sick.
I'm pretty impressed with it. It's like, I think the Agua is 18 ounces. I was asking one of my buddies about it because I wanted to make it lighter than his.
Yeah, it just depends what size you get because they have three sizes now.
Yeah, I think their 21-inch is like 18 ounces.
Yeah,
but a saw like that is going to save you so much time, like or an Agua like he has. I mean, it's just going to save you so much time.
Yeah,
even over like a folding Silky, you're just going to cut wood so much faster with one of these buck saws or an Agua like what Devin has. Those things are no joke. You can rip through big chunks of seasoned wood with those things.
I'm looking at it.
He's got it right now.
I'm looking at
Devin,
it.
I remember you sent me a picture of this, didn't you?
I have something.
I think I did. Yeah,
you did.
I have something.
And if you're really going lightweight, you get one of those saws and find wood that's only 4 inches in diameter, and leave the axe at home. I mean, you can baton stuff like that all day long with a good knife and save 2 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's really what
true.
matters to you.
I got these sweet axes now, though.
Yeah.
There's so many sweet axes. I mean, oh man, I've fought it so hard and so long.
I know.
I have no regrets for buying that.
No, I was I'd never used an axe before, and I've taken it on twice now, and I kind of do what Devin was talking about, which I thought it'd be like using an axe to split all this big wood.
That's what I was doing.
That's what but I was finding like, little ones just like and you could just like cut them super fast like that. So it worked well because when him and I go out, we just, one of us takes an axe and one of us takes a saw, and it does work out well. And it was just the whole time I've been out here with him, I was like, man, when you have 2 people,
what a difference.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously carrying the weight, but it makes an even bigger difference in just processing wood and getting everything. I mean, we probably got to camp by 3, and after an hour we had more than enough wood and everything was set to go. And I was just like, I don't know, doing this. You guys do this by yourselves a lot, and that's like a full-time job.
Yeah. The thing that I like about the axe is it adds a little bit more utility, especially with frozen ground, because you've got a built-in hammer for your stakes.
That's true. That's true.
Which is nice. Yep. But even if you're like on ice or anything, you can break up that ice or just like really crunchy snow to build a dead man anchor.
Yep.
It's not like the axe is not only used for.
That's true.
Absolutely. And I did mention the lightweight and using the knife to baton, and honestly, it's pretty much never my practice. I mean, I always had a hatchet or an axe on almost every single one of my trips because, like Devin said, it's not just for chopping wood. I mean, a creative mind can do a lot of stuff with an axe or a hatchet.
This has been eye-opening.
Yeah, we could do some trapping.
I know. Just this whole podcast was exactly what I was like. I just want to talk to these guys.
Like I've chopped through ice to get to water, so I don't have to melt snow.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I'm not going to want to do that.
Awesome.
That's what Barry wanted the axe for.
That is what Barry. Yeah, when we had a guy from the show Alone on a month ago, and that's awesome. That was literally.
Shout out to Fiskars because those things are awesome. They're cheap.
Yeah.
Everybody recommends those actually for like
they're
a cheap.
Awesome.
Like a
awesome.
cheap.
And they sharpen easy too, which is nice.
Very easy.
Yeah,
very easy to maintain.
They're made in Sweden or something like that.
All right. What we got? We got anything else? This hour's gone so fast.
No.
Yeah, you guys got to make these more than an hour.
I know, right? I know. Sometimes we do. They're always more than an hour.
Yeah.
We try and be respectful of people's time.
Yeah, and man, we need to get out more in the hot tent before this weather.
We're going out to visit our sister in a couple weeks, and I guess we don't really talk about this on the stream. But we're going to an area where they don't allow stoves, like period, almost, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to take the hot tent, but I think that obviously is a stove. So
it's gonna be classic winter backpacking.
Yeah, it'll be cool. It'll be a good. It'll be like,
which is awesome.
It'll be pretty though. It'll be super pretty. But no, I think there was a lot of really good information that you guys divulged.
Yeah.
And I certainly learned some stuff. So
and it's nice talking to experts on the subjects.
It is.
not an expert.
I know he keeps saying
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but everything you've said over the last hour is contrary to that.
I just make a really good model.
Yeah. That's fair too. All right. You got anything else for him?
No. I appreciate everybody showing up in the chat.
How about questions? Anybody asking questions?
There we're trying to
Yeah.
Boreal, Sven, Bo, Buck versus Silky from Kevin Dufresne.
Oh yeah, Kevin, what's up?
That was a question. So
man, personal preference. Like, honestly,
I think it was everything but Silky is what you guys recommended.
yeah, that was the official.
Silkies are awesome.
Yeah, no, but I
Those
mean,
things rip.
yeah.
The problem with those saws that are not the buck style is the end is not captured, so
That's a good
everybody
point.
breaks the end off of those,
Yeah.
the
I've
Gombo
seen a
Boy
lot of
or
them snap.
the Pocket Boys, like
I
they
didn't
just
think about
break.
that.
Yep.
I didn't
You
think
don't
about
get
that.
as much cutting area and length, unless you. I mean, you can, but they're bigger and heavier and way more expensive. You know.
Devin, this might be a good question for you from Steven Overfield. Suggestions on a solo hot tent?
I would just go with the Lux Hex Peak XL.
Lux Mini Peak XL.
I was going to ask Justin.
XL. So that's actually a good point to bring up because you're introducing two different fabrics with those options.
Yep.
Polyester on the Mini Peak XL and Sil Nylon on the Hex Peak. So with the Mini Peak, you're getting a like true pyramid versus a like hexagon with a teepee on the Hex Peak, but the Hex Peak's going to pack up a little bit tighter and be a little lighter. So if you're not in a super rainy, stormy environment, then the Hex Peak is the way to go because it's going to be lighter.
Agreed.
But the Mini Peak with the polyester fabric, if you're in a very wet environment, heavy snow, you're not going to get that stretch, and it's a way better option.
That's exactly why I bought the Mini Peak.
Yeah.
Four stakes for setting up and no sill sag in the mountains and stuff.
Interesting.
In the winter.
Yeah, and
I
that's the
didn't think
difference
about that.
between New Hampshire and the high desert of Utah.
And I honestly, I think there's only like, what the Hex Peak is, like 2.1 pounds, and the Mini Peak XL is 2.9. So
that's
like
not
a
huge.
0.7 pound difference, which is substantial to some, but to me, like, it's still less than a 3-pound hot tent that has a ton of room. That's rugged. It's a pretty good combination. Both of those tents are awesome.
Do you guys use trekking poles just as the main center pole, or do you guys use the the Lux pole?
I use the pole.
Both of you guys use the pole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have the pole,
Yeah.
but I was like, you can shave a pound if you can. I don't know if you guys have experimented.
You can, but have fun in a snow load.
Yeah, right. I know.
Pounds, with that little connection. If you want to really save weight, take the connection, pitch your tent, and then you have exactly the length you need and go out and find a wooden pole.
That's
out
true.
there.
That's true.
But the convenience of having the pole, like Devin and I both apparently do, is pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, because if you look at other pyramids out there, like the Hyperlight, Ultimate or whatever. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Dan Becker had that in the Smokies with us, and it did not work out.
Well, that's like a $700 tent too.
Yeah,
Yes,
crazy. I mean, it's Dyneema. It's crazy,
Yeah.
crazy light. But that has the purpose of being pitched with trekking poles.
Yeah.
And if you, like Justin said, under a snow load, trekking poles are not going to be strong enough. And the height of the tent for most of these are over what a trekking pole is going to extend to.
Yep.
So when you add that height of the trekking pole where it's at its weakest, because you're at the ends of those extensions, and I've been in a snow load and that pole is like literally curved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
I wouldn't even think it would handle wind that well.
Wow.
Like real good wind. I'm sure people do it, but
winds. Yeah.
I'd be skeptical.
That's good to know because I've only ever used the pole.
Yeah, that was really good information.
Yeah.
Because like Devin was saying, those Mini Peak XL and the Hex Peak XL, those are 5'2", and you're not going to use one pole. It needs two.
Right.
And Lux makes those connections.
Yeah.
But the Mini Peak, which is a 2-person, and the Hex Peak, which is a 2-person, both of those do pitch with the trekking pole.
With the trekking, 4 feet, 4 inches, something like that.
Yeah, but you're not going to put a stove in those because you don't have enough clearance between the outside wall and where the stove is.
I guess it can be done. One of my buddies, the backcountry paddler, he got a Hex Peak with a hot tent set up with the stove, and I suggested that he get something bigger because it was going to be really tight.
But it worked out.
He went ahead and got it anyway, and he said it's really tight, but it's doable.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. It's a lot tighter than I'd want to deal with because I know how tight those walls close in fast. Man.
Yeah.
Even in a 6-foot tent, you don't get much headroom.
No, you don't. Someone asked,
Justin, how many? D Alley says, how many hours did it take you to make your tarp hot tent?
I did it here and there when I had the time.
Yeah.
But 4 or 5 hours, you could do it in an afternoon, in a day.
Oh.
You know, if you had the time and you had all the materials and you watch the process and you know what you're going to do, you could do that in a day. Easy. And those are awesome tents. They're just heavy.
This is a good question.
This is a good question and something I have wondered before because I've seen people do it. Poucher asks, do you guys ever get worried about the stovepipe blowing in the wind?
Yeah, I do. And I made a...
Do you guy it out?
Only when it's nasty.
Okay.
I made a spark arrestor out of hardware cloth that I could put fishing leader lines, steel leader lines to, so I could guy it out. But I only do that when it's really, really windy. Yep, for sure. Usually I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like the tension of the tent, and the stove placement, and all that stuff, and it's fine. But in heavy winds, for sure, I would want to guy it down and have, yes.
Devin?
I've never done it, but I've also not been in crazy windstorms. I've been in some pretty gnarly snowstorms, but I've considered taking just some like galvanized or just like S hooks that you would use in your garage and doing the same thing, just like 2 of those and guying them out. One of my tents, the stovepipe is not captured very deep inside of the tent, and it's been a worry of mine. But with the Octopeak or the Megahorn, it's
like
there's
the
enough
tent's high enough.
There.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
it's more of an issue with shorter tents.
Okay, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. I saw a hunting guy do that like when I was researching this, and I was like, I didn't even think about that.
What about a cap for the pipe?
Thing with guying out your stoves, and this is something that a lot of people actually don't talk about, I'm glad this came up, is that you can really damage your stoves.
Really?
You want to make sure that you've got some shock cord or something that gives, because metal expands and contracts with fluctuation of heat.
Yeah.
If you've got that thing tightened down pretty good and then start heating it up and everything expands, there's a possibility that you can hurt your stove or stovepipe in some manner.
Yeah.
I've never done it. I've heard of it happening to people. And I think it's definitely worth mentioning.
And if you're putting too much force down on top, depending on how the stove is put together, especially the lightweight titanium stoves, those roll up stovepipes.
Yeah,
you could buckle, depending on what the pipe is. You could buckle that roll, and then you've got smoke coming into your tent. Or like with the 3W stove that has the spark arrestor and the damper plate on top. Well, on top of the stove, but there's not a spark arrestor at the top of the stovepipe. You don't have any real structure, so if you're pushing down on that, it's going to make it really hard to move that damper plate in and out.
That makes sense.
Where like a lot of stoves, I don't know how the Seek Outside is or the Winter Wells, or there's so many other like titanium stoves that are out there now, but a lot of them have that like turnstile.
That's what I have.
Yeah. Yeah. But the 3W has a plate that you slide in and out.
Yep.
Yeah, so something that actually happened to us. This is something we didn't really talk about it. So this is a learning experience for us. So we got set up, everything was good, burned the stove, and what had happened was, I don't know why this happened, if we just set it up wrong, but if the stove pipe was not perpendicular to the ground, right? It was kind of like leaning one way. And what that I'd be curious if this has ever happened to either of you. What happened was all that, I forget the term, creosote, whatever, the stuff that builds up on the inside of the stovepipe.
Yeah.
It dripped down and it was collecting on the spark arrestor because I had the dampener almost fully out and it clogged the spark arrestor. And we noticed smoke.
And we were having trouble keeping the fire.
Smoke was coming out of the stove. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this isn't supposed to happen. And I was like, I wonder what this is. And I pulled the spark arrestor out and it was completely black and solid. Yeah. And the stove kicked right back on. Has that ever happened to you guys?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I don't feel like too much of a dumbass then. I was like,
yeah, but I think that's kind of specific to the stove that you and I have.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't necessarily have that.
Is that because the stovepipe was not perfectly up and down? Oh no. Okay.
Really? No. That fixed it though.
Well, it did
probably
fix
had
it.
Something to do with the wood you were burning.
Like it was too
your wood wasn't seasoned, or you're burning pine or spruce or something of that sort.
Okay, so this is good to know because
very resinous.
That's kind of a big deal if that happens.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that could happen.
Okay, but what's weird is that we fixed
when we
we took it out.
I was like, I have to take the spark arrestor out. I mean, smoke is backfilling into the tent, so like the spark arrestor has to come out, and we're gonna have to roll the dice, or we have to just shut the stove down. So we just rolled the dice, and it was fine. But I thought it was purely because of the angle of the stovepipe, and it was dripping down the side. But so that could just happen.
Yeah,
you can set stovepipes at all sorts of crazy angles and they'll be functional.
Okay. So you think it's a wood thing? Okay,
it's a wood thing for sure.
Oh, that sucks.
How close together is the mesh on your spark arrestor?
I should get it.
It's decent.
It's decent. I mean, I don't know, Devin. I feel like you know the answer to that. It's buried in there.
Kind of like standard chicken.
Yeah, quarter inch.
Yeah. But it was. I mean, I took that thing out, and it was as if you dipped it in tar, literally.
Yeah.
It was just. I mean, literally, and it actually was kind of cool. All I did was all night I set it on the stove, and it all burned off. Like the soot came off when I heated it up, and by morning the spark arrestor was fine.
But it was hilarious because when you pulled it out,
when we pulled that thing out, the stove just blew up with heat. I mean, in a good way. And I was like, that was the problem.
Because you have to remember too how the stove like physically works.
Right.
You've got air vents in the front on the door, and then your damper allows for the stovepipe to basically suck air through the firebox and then up and out the stovepipe. Yeah. So when you cut off that ability for the stovepipe to pull that air through the firebox,
you're starving it effectively, right?
Yeah. So once you unclogged that, it was like, oh, I can breathe again.
It was crazy. Yeah. It was like it went from 30 degrees to 70 degrees inside that hot tent in like a minute.
But
then awesome. I was like,
that's another thing that's a good point. A stove creates suction, obviously. Right. It's all about suction, like Devin said. So it's almost like having a running functional stove is almost like having your own personal anti-CO2 buildup.
Yeah, because it's like it's pulling.
You're sucking air constantly. And if you put a wood stove in an area that has no available fresh air, it's going to go out. Like I was a stonemason many, many years ago, and we built houses would get built so tight in the modern day and age, the fireplace wouldn't work in a house, inside a house. So if your stove is working, you're sucking outside air.
Yeah.
You're getting fresh air. There's circulation going on and heat rises. So all that stuff is working for you in terms of CO.
And you can, with at least the stove we have, I mean, you can tell you can tell it is sucking air in those that
They sound like
area.
trains, man.
Yeah.
Once they get going, it's nerve-wracking if you don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with wood stoves heating in our houses, so I'm fairly familiar with them. But even when I got my titanium stove inside a tent for the first time, and that thing's like,
yeah,
and the stove pipes getting red hot.
Yeah.
Like,
Andy loves it.
Yeah,
Andy's like, we're gonna get this thing red. I mean, it gets so hot.
Yeah, and I see that as like a mistake, if you want to use that word, but things that people that have never hot tented before, and then they buy the stove and they're like, it's either burning through the wood wicked fast because they've got everything open, and so it's just like sucking a ton of air. But once you've got your bed of coals built up, just shut things down and like let the wood like you would at home with a wood burning stove, like slow things down and let that burn slowly.
The problem with our stoves is that there's so much fluctuation. There's no heat retention, so it's like Kevin said earlier, it's a constant up and down and fluctuate. It's hot, and then all of a sudden, ooh, it's cold. We better get the stove going again. So it's almost like the bed of coals is what makes the difference.
Yeah,
and that's something we struggle with.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's probably from the stove rip roaring to just dying down is probably a 30-degree swing.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then once again, these are things, you know, everyone, you know, you see people going hot tenting, and we're part of the problem because like, it's so cozy in here, and it is, but it's like a sine wave in terms of like temperature if you're not just constantly feeding it.
I can't believe that was a wood issue. It makes sense.
No, when you think about it, you're right. It's like crap in the smoke. That's like
being that it was liquid and tar, like
it was tar.
That's a wood issue.
Yeah.
If it was like a dry creosote buildup, that would have been a combustion issue.
Yeah, no, it was like
make a hotter fire.
It's like,
but the liquid is a sure tell sign.
Dude, it was, and you could see it dripping down. It was literally like I took the arrestor and just dipped it in tar. And I was like, what is this?
And so that happened on your one of your first burns.
Second, third actual burn of the stove. Yeah,
that's crazy. That happens fast.
Yeah, and so that was the next question is like, have you guys ever had issues with sparks? Like when I pulled that thing out, I was like, now luckily, Devin, I had not trimmed my stovepipe down yet. Yeah. So I was like, at least I've got a longer length of a column for sparks to travel in case they come out.
Secret.
And like, so like, do I even need to worry about it? Like I was, cause like, I don't want to put a hole in this tent. It's like the third time I've used it. Yeah. But at the same time, like you have to have the fire going. So we just had to roll the dice. But I was like, at least if I've got a long enough stovepipe, I might be, I don't know if you guys have had issues with sparks. Like, are even with spark arresters, can you still get sparks coming up through there? And totally. You can? Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you probably haven't been outside of your tent as your stove is cranking, but I've seen my stovepipe like full on burning, like flames coming out of.
Same.
But the only reason that you would trim down the height of your chimney pipe is so that you don't have more weight, and so you're not creating a pendulum for wind for it to rip out, not having enough height from the side wall of the tent.
Yeah.
And with our lightweight tents too, these fabrics, like sparks are gonna happen. Sparkles are gonna happen. There's no
I've got a few holes in my tent.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. They're minimal. I've heard a lot of people complain about a lot of sparks, and I don't know if that is maybe they're burning too much pine or something.
Yeah.
But I've my mini peak, I've had that for over a year, and it's got 2 spark holes in it.
Okay. All right. So that's
long stovepipes are what you want, like Devin said.
Okay. And I didn't know if it mattered. I don't know why it would, like, because some stoves have spark arresters like at the top, at like the chimney, and like ours is at the bottom. I don't know why that would matter. I don't know if one was more advantageous to the other.
Yeah,
I don't know. And then maybe I'm just gonna stop worrying about it because it's just gonna happen. And I guess if you get a little hole, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, but I heard another comment too that just made was, I mean, you've got some buildup on your stovepipe on the inside of it.
Everybody does, right?
Everybody does.
Everybody does, right? Yep. I mean, do you guys do anything about that? I mean,
burn hot fires.
And just just burn it off.
Burn hot fires. Yep.
Yeah, I've done that, but I've also taken like steel wool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and like
And
got
just,
in there.
Very lightly, because with the titanium stovepipe, you could like
Yeah.
be like sandpaper, right?
Yeah.
You could really make a mess. But
If you mar it up, it's just going to make the problem worse.
That's true. More surface area for it to collect on.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So
yeah, just like knocking off the surface stuff that's already flaking.
Yeah.
Is
I
what
mean,
you
chances are, like, if you're burning, one of the last things I do is get my stove ripping red hot, try and clean it out, and I let it cool down.
These are good
And the
tips.
process of doing that,
That's a hack.
and when you,
That's a
then when you
hack.
fold it up,
That is a hack.
it is a hack. I suppose you're right. But the combination of doing that and then folding it up when you're breaking it down, like, all that stuff is falling off.
Yeah.
Coming out and making a mess, and your hands smell all funny.
Yeah.
You,
Gets
you know,
soot
you look like
everywhere.
you're dirty doing something,
Yeah.
man things. You know?
You get soot everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool though.
I guess since you brought up tips, another thing I thought about was a good pair of leather gloves,
Yeah.
like leather
For sure.
gloves. They may not be like the warmest thing for being out on a winter trip, but you're gonna burn yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
5,000%.
Yeah, that was
And
funny.
I do bring a pair of leather gloves specifically for dealing with the stove, because
You got to get in
you know,
there.
you don't want to
Yeah.
burn your $100 gloves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Messing around with a stove. So a good cheap pair, go to a dollar store, get a cheap pair of leather gloves
Yeah.
so that you can just manipulate that thing when you
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah,
That's a
no,
good
that's an
tip.
absolute must. And I
Yeah.
had a nice thick
Great
pair of
point,
leather
Devin.
gloves. Yeah.
Because you can
Good
get
point.
something you can get in there.
I was
you know,
I was moving coals around.
it's 1 a.m. We're crushing a bag of Doritos. Like, why isn't the stove going? You know, I don't know. That's a good one.
Yeah, and the other nice thing about the leather gloves is when you're processing wood.
Yeah.
I like to wear gloves when I'm swinging an axe, if I've got my hands around a blade of any kind.
Yeah.
Because
Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good
risk,
idea.
risk management.
Yeah. It's
all
just
Yeah.
just
Accidents happen.
Yeah.
Fast.
yeah, I know. Have you guys ever been in any sort of dicey situations where, like, I don't know if like something happened with an axe or saw, or like has that ever happened when you're in a hot tent? Like anything where like, oh shit.
No.
I mean, I've burned myself.
I
That's
agree.
fair.
I'm with you. I've got some pretty good blisters.
Yeah.
That counts.
But all my digits, nothing never close to. No.
But most of it's just been from like middle of the night when I'm like, oh, I'm gonna feed the stove, and you randomly in the dark touch the side of the
yeah.
something. And
I'm also
I'm freaked out about
It gets me when
accidentally.
I'm cooking.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll
I'm
just forget and I'll
too.
grab the pan. Think, oh.
I know you're gonna say I'm freaked out about like sleeping bag or sleeping pad getting close to the side of that thing, because like we're sleeping pretty
Okay.
close to it.
I've got a real good hack.
Oh,
It's a good hack.
all right. What
All
is
right.
it?
Go out, cut yourself some decently long wooden stakes, and smash them into the ground
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, at the edge of your
in front of the
pad.
stove so that you can't roll into it.
Oh, see, that's
That-
good.
I haven't even thought about that.
That's
Yeah.
a good
awesome.
one.
I've
Yeah.
done that several times.
Justin,
Not
you
every
need to
time,
make-
but
Justin, can we get a hot tent hacks video?
Yeah.
we're covering it.
Yeah,
here.
you could just pull this podcast and chop and cut it up.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea, though.
Yeah.
Because you do. I mean, I like sleeping a little close to it. I mean,
It's nice.
you know,
It's nice.
it's definitely nice. But one thing, yeah, it's like sleeping pads and also like sleeping bags, like or like my quilt. Like if I'm kicking my leg out or something, or I don't know, those fabrics. If you get anywhere close to something super hot, are just gonna melt.
Yeah.
So
It's
that
an
was
expensive mistake.
it is,
Yeah.
and especially if you pop a sleeping pad too or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know that
I
was
actually
the.
just made a fleece liner.
Yeah, you were
on my
talking about
last trip
that.
I went on. I just made it. I'm going to talk about that in one of my upcoming videos. But
And
I made a fleece liner to go over my Nemo tensor and my pillow.
Yeah.
That's an
because
awesome
those
idea.
Pillows suck, but I figured it would be good for sprite protection because I like
Yeah.
to sleep next to fires,
Yeah.
and increased our value as well. You know, I guess.
Yeah.
In theory.
And I saw you released a video. I don't know when it was, but you were doing it's like 3 guys. You had a fire, and then you had like your lean-to,
Oh, that was awesome.
and then you had you put a wool blanket on top of your stuff for fire protection. I was like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That was when I was in the mountains. We were
Yeah.
camping on Mount Escutney in like sub-zero weather, and a lean-to, a Polish lavu, not the lean-to. I'm sorry, a lavu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's right.
but yeah, I
I
hiked a heavy-ass military wool blanket all the way up that mountain so that I could wrap it over all my sleeping bag and pad so that the sparks wouldn't pop my stuff.
I'm always terrified of that.
I know.
Yeah, I know. Trust me. It's like when you spend almost $200 in a sleeping
Yeah,
bag, the last
that-
thing you want to do is
That's an expensive mistake.
melt it.
Yeah. The good thing about a hot tent, at least, is you don't have to worry about sparks inside the tent. But I'm more worried.
No,
about...
I don't worry about it so much in the tent,
Yeah.
but outside sleeping next to a fire in cold weather,
I know.
that stuff doesn't play well with sparks.
No, none of this lightweight stuff does. Oh, someone says
No, it
inexpensive welding gloves. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Rocky Top
Top
Wrangler.
Wrangler. That is a good idea.
Yeah.
And we got several people watching this from the woods.
Braxton Bliss is in
So,
tent right now, winter camping.
So that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Another person
and
was too.
Salmon Outdoors, currently watching this from the tent out winter camping.
Nice.
Very
Shout
All right.
out.
You guys check out hot tents.
Yeah, you're out there freezing.
Yeah. Although it's not too bad. At least where we live, this is a little bit of a mild stretch right now.
Yeah.
So that was actually a question I wanted to ask both of you is when Andy and I, last time we were out, it was like 6 or 7 degrees outside. And I'm like, it would actually be really cool to have a hot tent in like the 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
Like how warm would it be for you guys to still consider taking a hot tent?
I that would be pushing it for me.
Yeah, like over freezing, or you're not taking
I think
it?
hot tenting is really cool and it's awesome in cold weather, but there's a lot more involved than just like tarp camping.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's this real sweet spot when it's not too cold and there's no bugs and nothing beats a tarp.
Yeah.
Like nothing. So at that point, I kind of stopped using the hot tent.
Yeah, if I can fairly comfortably be sitting around camp in like my regular layers, then I'm not interested in the hot tent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even in the wintertime, if you go out with a bunch of dudes, it's not like you're hanging
That's
out
true.
in the hot tent.
Yeah.
You're all sitting outside
That's
by
true.
the fire, getting drinking beers, talking. And
See, I don't have a problem being like, I'll just be in the hot tent.
Yeah, right. It's warmer.
Watching football games.
Yeah, that's what we do, Devin. That's what we do. But I want to take my wife, even in a hot tent. She loves the idea of a hot tent, but she ain't coming if it's 5 or 10 degrees outside. So I was like, if it's like 30, that way it won't be super cold in the hot tent, even if they're not burning a stove. But then it's like, if it's 30, right? Like, is it even worth taking?
Hey, shout out to Jason Wish. He just texted me.
Oh, what's up, Jason?
All right.
There we
He's
go.
out camping, isn't he?
Yeah, he's looking for hammock recommendations.
Well, this is a hot tent podcast. We'll do a hammock recommendations podcast next week.
Move along.
Yeah, right. Come on. This is great.
No, but the hot tents are great for getting like wives.
Yeah.
The intimidated, your kids, your young kids. Like this is where hot tents really shine and help.
That's a good point.
Extend that season to people that might be a little
She was still like there's no netting. That was kind of a weird thing.
Well, like no floor.
There's no floor, there's no netting, which I actually kind of I
prefer.
kind of like that.
A lot of people get hung up on no floors in the winter.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I get crucified in the comment sections.
Really?
Oh my god. each to their own. Right? Hike your own hike, right, Kyle?
Yeah.
But yes, some people just don't like it apparently. But I much prefer it for many reasons.
I like it. I like it. It's just I don't love bugs, so there's that. But like in the winter and the late fall and spring, it's really cool to not have to need all that extra like netting and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah.
But
and you just got to make sure, given the conditions, because I mean, you could be hot tenting out without any snow, or you could be on top of like several feet of snow. It just depends where you're at. So I'll carry different types of ground sheets to be able to put my gear on top, like that bathtub floor that you talked about.
Absolutely.
Just all that stuff, because your stove should not be on top of fabric. It needs to be on the ground. So like, don't lay a tarp out.
Whoops. This needed to be in the tips video that I wanted to watch.
So like, yeah, the likelihood of the inside of the tent becoming a mud bath is pretty high.
Well, that's why we put the stove, and we brought a like $10 Walmart tarp, because we've only gone out in the snow, and I'm like, obviously this thing's going to melt all the snow around it, and I didn't want it to be like a mud bath. But we probably shouldn't have done that in hindsight. I don't know.
It's a cheap tarp.
It's a cheap tarp, and we knew we were going to destroy it. And it's funny when you remove the tarp in the morning, you can. Obviously, you can see where the stove was.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
It just like melts all the snow around it.
Yep.
So yeah,
they stink in the snow and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing to like keep in mind is you might not have sparks inside of the tent, but every time you open that door,
we burned many holes in the Walmart
smoke
tarp.
billows out, but then you're also like moving coals and stuff around because the wood's gonna fall into the door as it burns. And I've had plenty of coals like totally fall right out of the stove. So
yeah, we ripped a bunch of holes in the tarp. I was like, you can't have a bathtub floor near the stove. I'm like, you really
shouldn't.
Yeah,
and underneath those stoves get ripping hot.
I figured, I know,
ripping hot. You can use them like broilers. I mean, they get hot.
Well, shout out to the Walmart tarp. It withstood the heat. It didn't withstand the sparks, but that's okay. And it was a good, but honestly, like, you get so much crap, like the wood, like as you're processing and you're like moving the wood around, like all the bark falls off the wood and it gets really messy inside. It's almost nice to not, it's almost nice to just not have anything in there.
And like Devin said something too about having different ground sheet setups.
Yeah.
And I have the Luxe bathtub floor as well. That thing's awesome, but I don't use it in the winter because it collects snow.
Yeah.
It's got those walls and it collects snow. But like in the summertime when it's raining, it's perfect because you're just kind of sitting in it and, you're not getting a bunch of snow in it and stuff. I'm sure people do use it in the winter all the time. It's great. But in the winter, I prefer a flat sheet, just a flat ground sheet that I can actually take and fold over my sleeping bag and stuff to keep the snow off of it.
See, that's a good idea
that's
too.
That's another hack.
Yes, because you're in there and you're moving it around and there's snow everywhere and you're crawling in and out, and so you're getting snow all over the place. So yeah, wrapping that ground sheet over your sleep system.
Yep.
That's actually a hack.
Yeah.
I've had like 3 in the last 15 minutes. Oh, nice. That's funny. These are good stuff. All right.
Yeah, this is fun.
I know.
Now I expect each of you to do. You got ideas now, so we want to give the viewers some hack videos. So
I know. Just do tips, hot tent tips. Doesn't have to be hacks.
I want to watch it.
I feel so conflicted about doing stuff like that because I do not feel like I'm qualified to teach. I like making videos of what I'm doing.
Yeah,
like I'll explain what I'm doing, but there's just so many ways to skin a cat, and everybody's got their own opinion. And there's people out there that are way more qualified than me, like Devin, for example. Because he's a professional in the field. I'm just a dude that likes to go play
Devin,
woods.
I haven't seen a hot tent tips or hacks video from you, and I specifically asked you to do one too.
I'll default to Devin.
Yeah. If I had not gotten COVID.
Right. All right, we got anything else for these gentlemen?
No, I think
almost 2 hours.
Nice. Yeah, wow, that was very informational. I learned.
No, this podcast should be required viewing or listening to anyone who's even considering getting a hot tent, because you guys spilled a lot of knowledge and experience.
Right.
And that was definitely why we wanted to talk to you both.
Yeah.
And I actually learned a bunch of stuff.
I learned
just throughout
I learned
the last hour and
one of the
40
fun
minutes
things about it. Like this whole like outdoors thing is it's just a constant evolution of learning.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
getting your ass kicked and being like, man, that was awesome. Like, how can I do that different? Like, that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah.
For me.
I am looking forward to both of you guys. I know, Justin, I know you're taking the hot tent out more. Devin, are you doing more hot tenting?
Yeah, I should have some time. I mean, the mountains are full of snow until June. So
yeah. I'll milk it for all it's worth.
Nice.
Sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to some more hot tent content from both of you. We have
likewise.
Yeah,
yes,
I know. We will. Although we're going to California and can't take No stoves. They got a lot of fires. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
But in the winter,
yeah, it's like in the winter.
it's like 5 feet of snow.
Come on. Let me use a hot tent, please.
Well, we've got that really cool trip coming up with
I know.
like Jason.
I know.
Juan,
You guys are
all
going
those
out.
guys are
I know.
coming up in a couple weeks.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
You should have been here.
I
You should
know.
have been there.
I know. We'll make it happen. Trust me. I've never been to the Whites, and so
The invite's open.
I know.
For sure.
I want to go. All right. So obviously, we have links. Check out both of their channels.
Yes, please.
They're down in the description. They have great content. They have great content that's not hot tents. You know, we talked a lot about hot tents. But they have great stuff, super knowledgeable. We've both learned a lot from both of you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you very much for taking the time to do this. This was super fun.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I'm selfish and I just wanted to get a lot out of this, but I think a lot of people did too.
Yep.
And
shout out to Walk Tall for our
for our very first super chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for
All
watching.
right.
Yeah.
everybody.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.